Heroes Forge, a Heroes of the Storm podcast.
What's up, Forgers? Welcome to episode number 41 of Heroes Forge, a community-driven podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. This is your show host, Jeff Reynolds, and the all-star co-host of the show, as always, is Kristen Ashton, who happens to be more awesome than a new hero reveal for Heroes of the Storm. Kristen, welcome to the show this week.
Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome, but I think the welcome goes to you, Jeff. Welcome back. Welcome back from TwitchCon. The world can finally be in order once more.
No, I have to say, last week's show was so entertaining. I was talking to you a little bit about it offline. For those of you that didn't listen to last week's episode number 40, go back and listen to it. Because for the first time, and we've almost been doing this for a year now, I got to listen to it as a listener, as someone that, is very well versed in how the show works, and I listened to Kristen host the show, and Jocelyn was an awesome co-host. And Kristen, I gotta tip my cap to you. That was just incredible show. It was a ton of fun, and it was great to listen to it because now I learned about the show more than I ever could, and we're gonna have a few format changes.
We are, and I think they are going to be some very, very fun format changes that you, the listeners, and the audience get to actually be involved with. So definitely stay tuned for that.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff that we always say it's a community-driven show, so we want to keep making steps to make it more and more community-driven and get you guys involved in it as well. So stay tuned. Let's talk a little bit of news before we get into that. And just as awesome as Kristen, there was a new hero reveal, Kristen.
There was. It is Samuro from Warcraft 3. And I had to ask about Samuro because I haven't played Warcraft 3, so I didn't know who he was. And I read his summary on the wiki, and he's just a dude who shows up. But I guess the real pop culture experience came from being able to play as him in one rendition of the game.
Yeah, from what I know as well, I had to look him up like on a lore side. Obviously, watching all of the intro videos and everything that everyone's talking about. I mean, of course, they're killer. They're so good. The cutscenes at the beginning and all that stuff that came into showing you all the abilities. Those videos are always amazing. But like you, I had to go and do a little bit of research. Where is this guy from? Like, what's he a part of? And all of this and. He seems just like a total badass.
And he's a drinking buddy for Chen, which I think is the reason I got really super excited, because I love that Chen is our resident alcoholic, but now he's going to have a buddy. And on top of that, this buddy basically embodies a Japanese samurai. Well, I guess that's a little redundant, right? The samurai were Japanese spirit of honor, and he's got his katana and everything like that.
Yeah, it's such a cool idea to think no one drinks alone. So they need to bring Samuro into the game because no one drinks alone. Chen needs somebody to drink with. But I couldn't help but think when they announced this character and seeing the gameplay, and I know that the abilities would be different and it would look different, but I couldn't help but think of Genji.
That's very, very true. Now, having said that, do you think maybe they'll do a Genji orc skin for this, or do you think they'll hold back because Genji might actually come into the Nexus?
I think that Genji would be awesome to port over to Heroes, and I hope that they bring Genji over. Like I said before I started this, the abilities would clearly be different. I mean, the stuff would, it wouldn't really work for Genji to spawn two shadow forms of himself that help attack, the enemy, but it just has that feel of this samurai blade, quick acting, melee assassin that does all these really cool things. So I'm crossing my fingers that they bring Genji into the game because it would be really cool. But maybe this is a moment like we've talked about so many times on the show where maybe Genji's place in the Nexus is not now.
Sometime in the future, certainly. I feel that because we have so many assassins. I think that is probably the sole reason why Genji would be delayed. That, and I mean, there are so many other characters that have such a deep history with us and with the company itself. So it makes sense they would do Samuro as opposed to Genji first if we're going for a samurai character.
Yeah, and the reaction from the community was great when that was revealed, and the way that they revealed it is just really cool. Tons of stuff on the Blizzard website about this new character that's coming into the Nexus, so check it out, watch the videos. We only have to wait a few weeks, and also we only have to wait a few weeks for Heroes Brawl.
I am so stoked because last year at BlizzCon I got to try out the first iteration of it, I guess, and it was an all Vala team I got twice, and it was hilarious. It was fast, it was brutal, it was fun. So I cannot wait for Brawl to drop because I feel that's where my place will be.
Yeah, I think it's really, really cool. And the stuff that we have been able to read up and do a little bit of research on is really neat about what the direction that they're planning on making this a crazy game phase, but also the direction that they're going where it's completely different modes of playing this game, where, you know, there's one where it's a team of Novas and it's on the Towers of Doom, so you can only attack the enemy by shooting the core with the shots from your core, and you get a shot depending on if you destroy an enemy hero, it'll shoot off a shot from your core. I mean, Kristen, that is just such a cool way of taking that map that we already know and play constantly and changing it and putting it upside down.
It's such a unique way to take this, because they could have done it where they just changed up the heroes, but they didn't. They took it a step further, and now they're changing up the maps. And I think what I like about the idea of the Brawl most is that there won't be a meta, for now anyways, because I don't really like the whole meta stuff because it's forever in fluctuation. So what somebody tells you this week, probably going to be different next week or 2 weeks from now. Whereas if you have something this fast paced and changing continually, there's really no cemented structure. I say that now, of course, but we'll see how that actually fleshes out when it drops.
It works in these other games, right? And I'm curious to know if they implement this brawl mode in Heroes because of the success of, the weekly brawls in Hearthstone or the brawls in Overwatch. It's clear to me, with the implementation of these vote for the play of the game sort of things and the MVP in Heroes, that they're picking and choosing these things that work in all of their games and kind of putting it together, which makes just one big cohesive monopoly of awesome. So I'm curious to see if that is their whole thought process on it, if it was spawned from that, which I'm sure it was.
Sir, I think you basically wrapped that up as perfectly as it could be. A monopoly, as it were, on the best pieces, and to find how those pieces fit within their respective games while still being connected. So they're different, but they're the same.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I can't wait to try it. I don't know if I'm going to try it in PTR, if I'm going to wait for live game, but I really, really want to try it. And speaking of the live game right now, how are you feeling about Zarya?
I love her character. I think I don't like her as much as Sonya. I will forever love Sonya. Sonya is my girl. But I thought it was funny because she released and her damage wasn't too good. And then they super buffed her damage and she was wrecking. And then wasn't there a quick patch where they lowered it again?
I think so. I was playing a few games with Zarya because I wanted to get the feel for it. And I'm not sure if it's my play style or not, but it is a really cool... Because specifically what we talk about on this show is the kits, right? So it's cool how they took the kit from Overwatch and they brought it over. I was worried that it would get redundant with these characters like Tracer, Zarya, who knows what's in the future. So I was worried but it felt fresh to me. Did it feel fresh to you? Did it feel like it fit in the Nexus?
I would have to say yes. I would definitely have to say yes. And more importantly, the character came over from Overwatch. And personally, that's something I really, really like to see happen, because if the character comes over, I don't care what kind of abilities they have. It's the character that I want to play, and so I'm playing that way. And the abilities to me are kind of the icing on the cake. If they get those right, then you have the complete package and you can play how you imagine they would play in such a situation.
Yeah, great point. Great point. I think she's got a good place in Heroes, and I hope that it goes further. And I love to see these new characters in these tournaments that we have coming up. But I'm thinking it may still be too soon to see a Gul'dan in there, to see a Zarya in there. It might be too soon, especially when you're battling for the world championship at BlizzCon this year. So who knows? Speaking of tournaments, I went to the, like Kristen said at the beginning, I was at TwitchCon last week. It was an incredible experience, incredibly different than what I could have imagined. It's definitely focused on streamers, and if you are a streamer and you're really interested in that, that is the convention to go to, obviously. It was crazy. Thousands upon thousands of people. One of the things I was really looking forward to during the convention was a tournament that they had for Heroes of the Storm. I call it a tournament loosely. It was before the TwitchCon party, and it was broadcasted on Twitch, and basically we talked a little bit about it a few episodes ago, but the players were put into these torture chambers, quote unquote, where the where the chat in Twitch chat could vote on what would happen to them, whether it's inside the chamber it would get really hot, inside the chamber it would get really cold, the chairs would shake like there was an earthquake, or maybe they would blow around debris in the cube while they were trying to play. And it sounded like such a cool idea, but I think maybe Kristen, it might have fallen a little flat.
Yeah, you were saying the rumbles weren't exactly earth-shaking. The area of San Diego itself probably gets bigger earthquakes than that box actually put off. And then it got warm, sure, but if you come from Florida where it gets to be 100 degrees in the summer, I mean, what did it get up to? 85 degrees maybe? That's pretty comfy. Then to be cold, maybe it dropped down to 70s, 60s if we're pushing it. So it sounds like if they're smart about it, next year they will take notes on what worked, what didn't work, and then implement changes next year so that it can be the spectacle that it's supposed to be. So maybe it was just a first-timers test to see if it would work.
Maybe. You know, one thing I hope that they implement, if they even do this again, I mean, it was basically an advertisement for the powerful gaming computer that they were selling, you know, and they used Heroes to advertise it. And because we love this game so much, it's hard to watch these tournaments when there aren't players in there that know what they're doing. You know, we watched this and it was just kind of a mess where one of the teams would draft 3 tanks and the other team wouldn't have a tank at all. And they were all professional streamers that we all know and watch on Twitch, but they're not specifically Heroes players, so I'm not so sure that did justice to the game in general, the community in general, and I think it was just mainly focused as an advertisement.
That sounds like it, especially if that company was one of the big hosts of the convention, right? Because you do have to find that balance, I think. These conventions aren't cheap affairs. I mean, there's no telling how much of the cost even tickets actually cover.
Yeah, and it was a big affair. It was at a baseball stadium, and it was a huge thing. I love that Heroes esports feel, and it just didn't quite get there for me. So who knows? Maybe next year. But at home, Heroes at home is just killer right now. Kristen, talk about the new skins. There's some legitimate skins that are coming out for this game.
Some incredible skins. So we have a new superhero skin for Kale Boss of all people, which is so cool. And then we have this awesome Deputy Vala skin. Oh, it's incredible. She's got she's got cow chaps on and a hat. She's got little pigtails and her guns. It's a rootin' tootin' good time with Vala soon.
Cow chaps. Whatever cow chaps are, she's got them. And, you know, I will be purchasing both of those skins. They look so cool. And I think the eye mount is a little awkward. It's funny, but it's a little awkward.
It's true. And as so many people have noted, that eye is going to see some things.
Yeah, it definitely will. And Chad is bringing up the fact that there's a new Zool skin as well. The Zool skin is an auto purchase too. That Halloween, you know, scarecrow look. Oh, so cool. Take my money.
Exactly, and instead of the skeletons, oh no, in the bone prison, right? It's a harvest field prison, so it's crops that pop up and catch the person. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, they're all there. All of those skins are there, and I will be purchasing all of them. But I'm still crossing my fingers, waiting and holding my breath for Janitor Leoric that we talk about on the show every single week.
Yeah, we'll think of him fondly as we get these new skins, and maybe one day in the future, maybe even for Christmas, Janitor Leoric.
Yes, and I also want to be able to buy things for other people, Blizzard. So those two things, I want to be able to gift things. I'm going to give you my money. Let me buy something for someone else and gift them Janitor Leoric for Christmas. Nothing says happy holidays like Janitor Leoric. All right, on that note, let's forge.
Let's forge.
You are the listeners, we are the hosts, and this is Heroes Forge. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. We are so glad that you're here. If you're back again, welcome back. The way the show works is that we each build a kit for a hero that we think should be in the Nexus. Maybe it's a character in one of these other Blizzard universes roaming around out there that we think, you know what, they'd be pretty cool if they were in Heroes of the Storm. Kristen builds a kit, I build a kit, and then we banter back and forth and kind of talk a little bit about what they would look like if they were in the game, from their trait all the way down to, you know, what specialty skins like that Janitor Leoric would they have in the game. We're gonna kind of shake it up a little bit with the way we've been doing this. Normally we go back and forth with abilities, but this time we're going to turn it into a little bit of a competition for you, the listeners out there. We're each going to break down each one of our builds completely. That way you can see all the synergies and everything that we're talking about as we go through. And then when we get to the end of the two builds, you can vote to what build you think was the better of the two. Now, better is your own personal opinion. Maybe better is the funniest build. Maybe better is the one that would be most viable in the game. It's up to you. It's your vote, and you can cast it on our Twitter after the show is posted. Again, our Twitter handle is @ForgeHeroes. And you can check out all the other tweets that we put out there as well. But the voting will be posted later this evening after the show posts Sunday night. You can get your votes in before Wednesday because the winner of the two of us gets to choose the next hero. And the loser, or the second place person, who I like to refer to as the first person to lose, gets to go first next week. So we're making it even more community driven. We want to get you guys in on it. So without further ado, let's get started. Kristen, who are we forging this week on the show?
Well, this week we are forging the Treasure Goblin from Diablo III.
Oh, the Treasure Goblin from Diablo III. Now, I have very fond memories of the Treasure Goblin. Although it didn't always drop the loot that I wanted, I love chasing those guys around.
There is nothing more fun because it becomes this tunnel vision. You see him and you go and you hope that you live through the mobs that you pull to kill him before getting back to killing the mobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that don't know the Treasure Goblin from the Diablo franchise, the Diablo universe, so to speak, Kristen, give a little rundown on the Treasure Goblin and this crazy dude and what he's all about.
Can do. New to the world in Diablo III, treasure goblins are the embodiment of greed, looting corpses and otherwise doing what they can to amass treasure, be it from the rich or poor. Hunched over under the sheer weight of their treasure packs, these little goblins are more well known for their chuckle than their reward. Rumor has it that if you kill one, you get to keep its treasure. Furthermore, even more fantastical rumors speak of unclosed goblin portals leading to a treasure realm ruled over by none other than greed herself.
See, I love this. I love this, the way that Diablo takes these, 7 deadly sins, or, the most deadly sins out of all of them and kind of turns them personifies them into these beings or demons like greed, and to have little minions like the treasure goblins running around is just so cool. So if you haven't played it, what happens is you're just questing through Diablo. You're playing the game, you're doing your deal, going around, and all of a sudden you'll hear that little laugh that Kristen did at the beginning of this, and you'll see off on the map that there's a treasure goblin there. And once you start attacking this treasure goblin, his goal is to get out of dodge and go with his big sack of treasure as far away from you as he can before you take him out. So he starts running around, and you're chasing him behind him, trying to take him out before he can summon his portal, jump through it back to his realm of greed, and kind of count his stash on the other side of that portal. So if you manage to take him down in the game, it drops some pretty serious loot.
It does, and with one of the patches, they also diversified the types of goblins you can run into. So some drop just gems, for instance, now, as opposed to the original treasure goblin, which would leave trails of money, and then if you killed him, potentially drop gems or armor or other things like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you kill a treasure goblin and a legendary item pops out of there, or all the gold that shoots out of there. It's a cool experience. So whenever you see one in the game, your goal is to always take it out. But like you said, these other mobs are surrounding you, and you're risking your life sometimes to try to take out this treasure goblin that may just drop gold.
Yeah, or you may not even be able to kill because he gets away and then you're dead, because you pulled the entire dungeon.
Exactly. It's nuts. So let's get into some builds here. Kristen, you have the honor, since you did such an amazing job hosting last week. You get to go first. Let's start with the name. We always talk about these characters that are unnamed, that come into Heroes and they get a name. So what were you thinking this treasure goblin's name would be?
All right, for my treasure goblin, I did some research, and it turns out there is only one named treasure goblin in the entire Diablo III universe, and his name is Snitchly, the aspect of greed. So I am building us Snitchly as a specialist.
Ooh, Snitchly the specialist treasure goblin. So that's cool. I didn't know that there was a treasure goblin that had a name. I didn't see that in my research. Does he have a story, or is he basically one of those lore factors that you kind of read up a little bit about as you play the game and never really see or encounter?
As far as I could tell, there was no backstory, but he is larger than a regular treasure goblin, and instead of dropping loot when he runs away, he summons demons.
Oh, man, that's pretty different. I mean, you're not going to be picking up those demons and trying to trade it into the blacksmith for an upgrade on your armor. I mean, that's pretty different. So, specialist. Okay, let's hear Snitchly's trait over there.
All right, the trait, run faster. When taking damage, Snitchly moves faster. The more damage taken, the higher the speed boost.
I love it because it's definitely got the treasure goblin feel. I don't know if they move faster in Diablo when you start hitting them, but it sure as hell feels like it.
It does, and I'm not sure if they run faster either. But I do like the idea because you're chasing after them the entire time, and then they're laughing the entire time. So you hear their laughter in your headphones, but it slowly gets further and further away, so it gets quieter as you try to grasp it and bring it back.
So speaking of Snitchly, are you thinking, so you said specialist, so are we thinking health pool wise here? Because in Diablo, when you encounter these treasure goblins, their health pool isn't massive. It's just annoying that they run away. They don't have like a tank feel or anything like that. But I wouldn't necessarily say that they have a murky size health pool in relation to Heroes of the Storm. What were you thinking how much damage could he take in the game?
Well, that is a very good question. I think he'd be able to take a fair amount of damage because the treasure goblins scale based on your level. And each time I run into one, it's always been sort of a challenge to take them down. So I feel like he should not be a one-shot, boom, you got yourself a full hero. He should have to take quite a bit of damage so that he is a feasible hero within a team fight.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge part of this. And, watching that tournament at TwitchCon with all these, teams, quote unquote, doing team fights together and stuff, it made me realize that when you watch the esports aspect of this game, the team fights are just the heartthrob of the game. You know, you're watching this and you're thinking, this is why I'm watching this. These awesome, sick plays. So being involved in a team fight must be one of their top priorities over there when designing a hero. Great. Let's get into mounting. What are you thinking his mounting ability would be?
I'm thinking he wouldn't have any kind of mount and no extra speed buffs simply due to his trait. So if he knows how to play it well, he'll take damage on purpose in order to get a little bit of speed to get where he needs to go.
So cool. So are you thinking you might be able to talent into this trait even to even get faster in the game and run maybe as far away as you can faster?
I think that would be a pretty cool trait. Maybe you could do something where you could activate the trait.
Ooh, that'd be really cool. I love activating traits, even though I'm not good enough to play them. Like, I normally have to look down on my keyboard to find the button to press to do the activated trait. And then by the time I've done that, you know, my screen is blown up and I'm gone. So I need to take more lessons to figure that out, but I love that idea for the pro players. Let's get into some basic abilities for your build here. How about the Q? What were you thinking for his first basic?
So the first one, I'm doing something called Summon Demons, which plays to Snitchley's character within Diablo. So Snitchley summons 3 demons. These 3 demons will immediately head toward the closest lane and begin pushing, similar to Abathur's Locusts.
Oh, I love this too. It's got a definite specialist feel. And so when Snitchley summons these demons, is he like pulling them up from the ground, or are the portals popping open and maybe the demons are coming out? What are you thinking?
I think it would be kind of toned down, right? Because this is just a Q. So he'd be standing there and he'd be summoning. There'd be some glowing gold light, and then they'd kind of teleport in, almost like they were being beamed down or beamed up from hell, a la Star Trek.
Yeah, sweet. So these demons, you brought it up best. You said it is living on a basic ability here. So they're not going to be super powerful. You're thinking more along the lines of the same damage and health as an Abathur Locust?
Maybe a little more than that, but a little less than Asmodan's pushers.
Oh, okay. I see what you're doing. That's really cool. I love the lore of that. I didn't even know that existed, so I'm nerding out over here knowing about Snitchley and this named treasure goblin. I spent like 45 minutes trying to come up with a dumb name for my treasure goblin, and you found
Don't call it
one.
dumb, Jeff. You're trying to win this.
I mean, the best build. This build
Exactly.
ain't got nothing on mine.
The best name ever. Kristen's name, we're blowing it out of the water here. Just keep listening.
I am not conceding yet. Let's move on to the second basic ability. Go ahead and tell us, what is Snitchley's second to go along with Summon Demons?
Second is called Treasure Time, and when activated, Snitchley leaves behind him a trail of treasure that drops from his sack. Friendly units that run over it automatically pick it up and are granted stacks of bonus damage. So what I'm thinking here is that when he's not with his teammates, he would leave these drops for his lane pushers, his creep. They would pick it up, have damage bonus, and then be able to take down the enemy's creep a lot faster.
Oh, so it's not directly picked up by enemy heroes. Or
Correct.
Friendly heroes,
The enemies
rather.
would not be able to pick it up at all.
But friendly heroes, so you're saying that the minions as well can pick it up?
Yep, and this would also count for friendly camps that have been taken.
Oh, that's so awesome. I just love it because the synergy with all of these abilities and being able to pick up a camp and drop the treasure as you go. You drop this treasure in a line. Maybe you come down from mid, you pick up a mid camp, you come down to bottom, you're dropping treasure. You're moving faster because you took damage from the camp. So you're dropping treasure as you go. The mercs are picking it up as they come down. So by the time they get to the lane, they're just, basically Luke Cage coming in there, just wrecking the whole lane. And then you go up and maybe take another camp or get that one on the bottom too and leave it. Oh, bravo. Great idea.
Thank you. And just imagine too, if he had a talent where it was a bribe talent, but because you are a treasure goblin, maybe you need less stacks, right? It's faster to get the bribe going because you have treasure.
Yeah, you are the treasure goblin. Love it. Oh, that's just such a cool way to play that. And then just being able to run in and out because you've taken that damage. So good, so good. Okay, how about your E, your third basic?
Okay, E is battlefield robbery. Now, Snitchley is an opportunist. When he finds bodies on the battlefield, be they friend or foe, he loots them, gaining permanent buffs to his own damage that are then lost on death.
Oh, wow. So if he lives for a while, he's pretty strong.
He would be, yes. And I was thinking with this one, we need to take advantage of the bodies that do sit there on the battlefield, because not all of them lay there, but sometimes when you have a really sweet kill or something explodes, like bodies go flying, and they're there for a little bit before they disintegrate. So why not take advantage of that?
Yeah, I can tell you right now, I've had many a laugh watching Heroes of the Storm with the ragdoll effects. Sometimes, I don't know why in my mind it's always Jaina. Maybe I saw like 10 Jaina ragdoll explosions that were just really entertaining. But like when Jaina blows up and goes flying off, the Sky Temple, just goes crazy. I think that's really cool. And we've talked about this before on the show where, we could use these, for lack of a better term, these corpses, these bodies that are lying around the battlefield somehow. And this is a great idea. I had to go back to your trait because I have a question. So if the treasure goblin gets healed, he goes back to his normal movement speed, or does he keep that increased movement speed?
I believe he would keep the increased movement speed. Now, the longer he goes, hold on, let me read what I wrote here. Now, I do see it as kind of a decaying trait. So if you go without taking damage for a long time, you will lose the speed boost.
Oh, okay. So it's more of a timed thing.
Yes.
Oh, very cool. Wow, you could be really, really powerful. Running around, doing that treasure goblin thing where you're jumping from corpse to corpse, picking up the loot and dropping some because your pockets are too full. Let's get into the best part of this build. Let's talk about heroics. Kristen, hit us with your first heroic.
Right, heroic 1, Greed's Domain. With a devious laugh, Snitchley rips open a portal to Greed's Domain and treasure begins pouring out. Those friendly units close enough to it are now continually covered in more and more damage stacks shown by Treasure until Greed discovers what Snitchley has done and shuts the portal, severing the power of the treasure from the realm, rendering the damage stacks null and void.
Oh, so basically it's just a big debuff heroic. Like you're giving the debuff to the enemy team, the damage stacks?
Oh, this would be for the friendly team.
Oh, the friendly team.
Yes, I see that treasure is literally pouring out of it. And so all of a sudden, your teammates are covered in these golden bangles, but they're getting more and more damage stacks. But the reasoning for the portal closing is that Greed discovers what's going on, shuts it, and then severs what bonuses they were getting. So it's a timed buff.
That's cool. Okay, I like that. I like that idea better than my interpretation of it. So you're basically, oh, wow. So you're running in there. You could just run in with this speed boost, drop it in a team fight, and then, drop some coins while you're at it in there of your own coins, right?
That's true. You could pair it up and there's gold everywhere. Nobody knows what's going on. It's a free-for-all. Best fight ever.
Best fight ever. There's just money all over the place. And the enemy team's like, can we get some money? Only if you have Snitchley on your team. Okay, what's your second heroic? That one was pretty awesome. I wanted to ask before we move on. So this portal, it opens up. Is it like above the battlefield, or is it like a treasure goblin portal we know and love in Diablo where it kind of sits against the battlefield, or standing up? Does it kind of come above and the treasure comes raining down?
Oh, I was thinking the Diablo treasure portals where they're there on the ground and then just treasure shooting out and hitting people in the face, and I don't know if I want these damage stacks.
Love it. Very cool. Okay, moving on to your second heroic. Let's hear it.
All right, the second and last heroic is called Explode on Death. When Snitchley dies, this heroic activates. sending piles of treasure erupting from his body in an upside-down waterfall of destruction. Those enemies standing over his body will take damage as treasure pelts them in the face. Those enemies around the body will potentially take damage from falling treasure as it hits the ground.
Oh, okay. So this one is doing damage to the enemy when you explode.
Yes.
So it's like when you kill a treasure goblin in Diablo. I mean, literally, quite literally, it explodes.
Exactly. And you know how the gold is flying up and out? I really wanted to embody that.
That would be a great visual. I would just love this, because it's got this light that glows when you explode, like to show you all the treasure that you're dropping. So I think that would be such a cool animation to have your treasure goblin kind of erupt in a whole bunch of treasure.
Mm-hmm. But treasure the enemy team can't touch.
That's right, like cursed treasure.
Oh, even better.
So cool. Oh, these abilities are so awesome. I love the synergy with with the ability to be a specialist, run in, grab a camp, beat it to its destination, and while the camp is traveling to its destination, gets the gold stack so that it does more damage. I think that's so cool because it would force the team, like you all know that I like, to make decisions in the moment. Like that treasure goblin is on the enemy team. They probably took that merc camp, so we've got to take that camp out before it picks up too much treasure.
Exactly, because you can assume if you're against, essentially, they know that would be how to do it to play him to the best of his abilities. And also, I like the idea that, like you were saying, it forces the enemy team to react. It's not just a general mercenary camp where you know about how far they'll get before they die, so you can just let them go. They would more than likely be stacked with extra damage, so you'd have to take care of them immediately.
Oh, such a great idea. Awesome synergy with the whole build. Kristen, if you had to sum up your treasure goblin in just a short description, what do you think that would be? What were you really going for when you designed this treasure goblin?
What was I going for? I'd call him the Golden Goblin.
The Golden Goblin.
Because so much of it revolves around his gold.
Absolutely, which, fair enough, that's all treasure goblins are about, is their gold. All right, next up is my build. But before we get to my build, we really want to reach out and thank all of our supporters for the show. There are two ways that you can directly support the show. One of them is by just giving us a 5-star rating on iTunes. If you listen to the show on iTunes and you enjoy what you hear, dropping us a 5-star review helps the show grow. When people search for Heroes of the Storm in iTunes, our show will pop up more often the more 5-star reviews you have. And thank you to everyone that's left a 5-star review. We've had some awesome feedback, and we can't wait to grow with the show and everything. So thank you for the feedback. And also, if you do end up leaving us a 5-star review, make sure that you leave us a little note so that we can give you a little shout out on the show. And thank you for helping us out. The other way you can support us is through our Patreon site. If you love the show and you want to drop us $1 or $2, you can head on over to patreon.com/HeroesForge. Over there, we have some awesome goals that we're working towards. As all of our listeners know, we want to start forging battlegrounds. We want to start doing a lot of other community-driven stuff, and Patreon is the place that can make that happen. Thank you to all of our current patrons. We couldn't do the show without you. You guys are rock stars. Got into this show on the ground level when we started about a year ago. Thank you for supporting us. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, let's get into the second build over here, which is my build. And Kristen, I didn't do as much research as you, but my treasure goblin's name for my build is Donyuku, which is the Japanese translation of the word greed. I had this feeling that I wanted him to be like this, I don't know, something different. And I also liked the apostrophe in the middle of the name.
Certainly. I mean, apostrophes are enough to like a name. No one can fault you for that, right? Because words can also look beautiful. So it makes sense you'd want to pick a word that you like looking at. So why did you go Japanese as opposed to any other language out there?
I don't know. I just thought it was one of the cooler. I literally went on Google Translate and I typed in the word greed and I looked through probably 20 to 30 different languages just looking in. The first one I went to was Latin, but it was really crazy translation. I thought that would be really cool, but the Japanese one just stood out. I think it sounds really cool too, so that's going to be my name for my specialist as well. I went with specialist over here. I think that we're great minds moment here where we've got 2 specialists.
The challenge is afoot. No, that's great though. I mean, honestly, I thought maybe assassin, but he's too small and he's got the sack on his back, so yeah.
I actually played around with assassin too, but I think specialist is the way to go. So speaking of the way to go, let's get into my Donyuku's trait over here, which is called pickpocket. Stay with me, everybody. Stay with me, listeners. This is kind of crazy. So, the treasure goblin in Diablo packs up as much treasure as they can from their fallen foes and attempts to ditch out on the world of Sanctuary and head for their own realm to hoard their loot. In the Nexus, I wanted to give the same treasure goblin feeling to the treasure goblin hero. The treasure goblin would not be able to attack in the Nexus, focusing on his single purpose in life: get in, get that treasure. Upon the death of an enemy in the Nexus, they will drop a coin or coins that can be picked up by the treasure goblin. The treasure goblin can use these coins to purchase units from the core that will push the lanes and other powerful additions to the team. The treasure goblin can only carry a small amount of coins at the beginning of the battle, increasing with the level and talent choices that the treasure goblin player encounters through the battle. The fantasy here is that the treasure goblin would be a fast-moving, super squishy specialist that would annoy the enemy team by grabbing and cashing in loot before they can be taken out. So an enemy minion would drop 1 coin, an enemy merc would drop 2 coins, and an enemy hero would drop 3 coins. Coins only stay on the battlefield for a short amount of time before they are removed.
That's awesome. That is so freaking cool. So, oh my goodness. So everything that dies on the field drops a coin regardless of the treasure goblin's proximity to it.
Correct.
Maybe?
Yes,
okay.
Correct. So they can move in and out of lanes and pick up coins. They're only going to stay kind of like the coins you see in Blackheart's Bay or the gems that you see in Spider Queen. Those things, they disappear, right? Or even the regen globes, they disappear. So the treasure goblin can run around, pick up these coins, and then use them to buff his team.
Oh my goodness. Now so he goes back to his base. Where in the base does he turn in these coins?
Oh, we will get to that. We'll get to that in the build.
Oh goodness.
Similar to your build, though, I said that he would have an increased movement speed, so he wouldn't have a mount. That's treasure goblin, right, Kristen? Running around fast, getting in and out of battles, just kind of being that annoying goblin that picks up treasure, hence his name.
Exactly. And then, if he did have a mount, how many of us would put the treasure goblin on the treasure goblin mount? I know I sure would.
Yeah, heck yeah. Which is probably why we wouldn't see the treasure goblin in the game. It might be a little confusing to have the mount and the character, but who knows? Maybe with your build, though, since it's a bigger treasure goblin with Snitchley, maybe it's doable. Maybe it's cool. So that's my mounting. So far we've got this crazy trait that's bigger than any trait ever. So these basic abilities kind of fall in line to make it less crazy. So my first basic is called Dash. So need to get out in a pinch? No problem. Dash is here. This ability does just that. It allows the treasure goblin player to dash a short distance and attempt to get out of the fray. Because you can't attack, this is a huge ability to have.
Certainly, and it makes sense you would then put it on your queue, right? So I'm assuming it would be a faster cooldown. Now, would he jump forward, kind of like, as I think we bring this up at least once in every episode, vault, or would he just run really quickly for a short distance and then go back to his regular speed?
I think he would run quickly for a short distance, kind of like a Sergeant Hammer tank thrust, where you're kind of going faster for a short amount of time. And I like that we talk about the Vol. That's a great unit of measurement. We have a lot of those unit of measurements on the show. We got Vol, we got Mirrodin Leap, Dwarf Toss. We got a lot of different measurements. We got to relate to what people know.
Exactly. And I certainly know the distance a lot better when we explain it that way. Because if you try to tell me pixels, Not going to be able to reach that. Going to go straight over the head and over onto Oregon.
Absolutely. And Chad is saying that maybe my treasure goblin would play like other MOBAs that are out there, right? So yes, basically yes, it has that kind of feel where you have to go back to the core to purchase things. What's different about it, obviously, is that it's in Heroes, so that's not a thing to do that. And also the fact that you can't attack is kind of a crazy, Abathur Lost Vikings twist on it, where you're just basically out there to support and be that specialist that's helping pushing lanes. So with that, let's get on to my second basic, which is called Where We're Going, We Don't Need Roads. This is the only way for the treasure goblin to get to what I'm calling the treasure goblin store. So before I continue with this, I was reading this earlier today, like going through my notes before the show, and I thought that sounds really stupid. Like a treasure goblin store, like you walk in like it's a Walmart. But what I'm really envisioning is you're trading these coins, it's the embodiment of greed. So when you're in this store and you're able to select things, you're trading coins for these demons and you're trading coins for all this stuff, so it would have that kind of feel, and it would have a better name that Blizzard could come up with, but I'm calling it the Treasure Goblin Store. So when the second basic ability is activated, it's the only way that you can get to this Treasure Goblin Store, and a portal shows up on the battlefield and the goblin channels it for 4 seconds. After 4 seconds are completed, the goblin jumps through it and is transported to the core and is able to purchase upgrades for their team. If the goblin is attacked during this phase, they are interrupted and unable to continue channeling. This ability has no cooldown and can be used anytime.
Oh, sick. So as long as someone isn't in your face attacking you, you can just go back to the store at any time. But of course, the stipulation is you actually need enough coins in order to justify you casting this to go back. Now, is he going to have mana?
Yes, I would picture that he had mana. So it would cost mana to cast it. So it has no cooldown, but you're a little, in my mind at least, these goblins can have mana, right? Is that a thing? Maybe it's not.
They can have mana. It's Heroes of the Storm, right?
Yeah.
They brought back Arthas as the Lich King. These guys can have mana.
This goblin is trained in magical arts and has mana, or you can call it whatever you want to call it. It has some sort of pool that it has to draw from in order to cast these abilities. Whether it's hatred or whatever it is. Maybe it's called greed. I got it. That's it.
Perfect. There we go. The package, that's the bow tie. Let's ship it.
Okay, so it takes greed to do this, and you generate greed by being on the battlefield. So going back to the shop and purchasing things. That's basically that third basic there, or the second one. Speaking of third, let's get on to it. So the third one is kind of crazy. It's called Will and Testament. So this ability is activated when the player feels that they are not going to make it out of an engagement that they are currently in. It will spend all of the coins that the treasure goblin has collected, which really doesn't mean a whole lot because you're going to lose your coins when you die anyway. But so you're going to spend all of your coins, and upon death, the goblin will drop a special healing orb that can be collected by friendly heroes. So you turn into basically a sorcerer on the battlefield and you drop a healing orb that I imagine would do a little bit more healing on the battlefield, but not count towards quests.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That's actually a pretty important distinction that needs to be made now too, especially if this mechanic is introduced. So are all of the coins being spent to make this healing orb?
Yes. So you're going to die. Okay, so you think your treasure goblin's going to die. You can't attack. You're running around. Maybe you get stunned. Maybe you get hit by, an Uther hammer of justice or whatever, and you're stunned there, and you're like, this is the end for me. You're going to activate your third basic, which is called Will and Testament, and then when you die, you drop an orb. If you don't die, then you're just out of coins.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, is it instant or is there a slight cast time?
Maybe there's a slight cast time. Yeah, because I like your thought, because if you have a slight cast time, maybe there's an opportunity for them to just blow you up and then you don't get your last will out.
Fair enough. And then, how about this too? The more coins you have to spend on this orb, the bigger the orb is.
Ooh, I like that. Oh, that's great. I really like that. And then, of course, it will disappear just like any other orb on the battlefield. So if no one is around you, then you're kind of SOL.
Yeah, so you better pop it when you know somebody can run it and get it. But if not,
maybe not.
you better learn to play Snitchly or uninstall.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get into some of my heroics over here. So these are crazy. So basically, so far, the treasure goblin on my side is going to the store, buying basically minions that will push lanes, kind of the same feel as yours, where those Abathur minions are just slowly pushing lanes out through each lane, and you would actually determine which one it was inside of this goblin treasure store that would push through. So with my first heroic, I'm calling it Realm Sentries, which is a passive heroic. This ability gives the treasure goblin a lot more protection while trying to escape the battle. This passive ability will allow a realm sentry to jump out of the portal while the goblin is channeling it to protect them, while they're preparing to jump through it. So this sentry is a large hobgoblin with a spiked mace that deals damage to the enemy heroes attempting to harm the goblin. This ability does have a downside to it, though. Every time that the goblin summons the portal, it will cost 2 coins, and they will not be able to summon the portal if they don't have the funds. You cannot overdraw from the treasure goblin store.
Goblin big. That's why they're able to keep their money. They never loan it out. They are always in surplus. And if you can't afford to summon the portal, you don't get a portal, buddy.
That's right.
Oh. I like this balance of power, because the hobgoblin, are you thinking it does heavy damage?
Yeah, I think it's going to do some serious damage. So it has to feel heroic, right? So that's why I had to have it charge coins to you, because then you could just come out into the battlefield and just summon that thing, and if it wasn't on cooldown, you could just get your hobgoblins, around. I don't imagine that they would push lanes. I think that they would live on a timer in the area that the portal was summoned, which, if you're not able to attack, you're most likely summoning a portal in an area that's safe, right?
That's very true. That's very true. And that would kind of make this one a situational heroic, right? Because unless you find yourself near enemies a lot of the time, that hobgoblin's just going to go to waste.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly hitting the nail on the head there. That's exactly what I was thinking, is it's totally situational. Like, you're going to select this when you just can't find yourself getting out because you're getting blown up constantly. Maybe it's a learning heroic. Like, maybe it's a heroic you take while you're learning this character, which is not a great way to build a hero kit, but it's a thought here. And the hobgoblin lore is actually really interesting, because these are goblins that live inside of the greed realm, right? They live there, and you can actually visit it in Reaper of Souls. You can go in there, and the hobgoblins are these huge, massive guys that come in, and you have to take them out, and they're just, protectors of all the loot, so to speak. So that's where I got this idea.
Awesome. Okay, now before we go further, what does the store look like? Because we're hearing about this little TGS store going on, but how do you envision what it looks like, and then how you would work it on the screen?
So I'm imagining that this might be crazy, but I'm imagining that we're all about crazy here. What I'm imagining is you hit this portal. It takes you, after 4 seconds of channeling, your little dude goes, and jumps through the portal. When you jump through, you're in like a New Tristram setting kind of thing, where, demons have taken over and whatever, and you got this sack of gold, and a menu pops up, and it shows all 3 lanes and the options of things that you can put in each one of those lanes. So maybe there's only 2 options, and one is just like a basic skeleton unit that can push that lane, or a zombie, or maybe a wretched mother or something that you could buy to push those lanes, right? A wretched mother would be awesome. Anyway, so you select the lane and you buy what you can, and then if you move, like if your character moves out of that area, you're just teleported back through the core, like as if you stepped through the storm gate.
Perfect. I love it.
That was my crazy thought, and the witch mother would be awesome.
Oh yeah, could she barf and then summon other dudes? I love it. She'd probably have to cost the most, though, just because she can summon her own minions.
Yeah, maybe she's like the ultimate one that you can buy for like the full amount of coins, and you only get one, and it pushes a lane. Who knows? Well, speaking of second heroics, which we didn't speak of, but we'll move on to the second heroics, and this is what chat is talking about here. We had the same idea. Great minds, chat. I'm calling this Demon Baroness Greed. So this heroic allows the treasure goblin to purchase the Demon Baroness Greed from the treasure goblin shop. This purchase will take all of the treasure that the treasure goblin can hold at level 10 and will summon this massive boss-sized unit to push a selected lane. This boss has 3 attacks: Smash, Shockwave, and Falling Chests. Smash deals physical damage to all enemies in its path. Shockwave stuns enemies in its path. And Falling Chest rains down treasure coins that deal damage to enemy units. This boss has a cooldown and can only be purchased from the treasure goblin store very periodically to ensure that it's not overpowered.
Fantastic. That sums up that final fight so well. And I can imagine her just trudging her way along, and that shockwave would hurt so many people, because how many times do we get stuck in those roots summoned by the bosses, and we know the roots are going to be there, but we can't quite get out of the way in time.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought her up in fighting that. I mean, she is just a gross looking a model. It's just gross in a good way and gross in a bad way. Like, it's just this treasure goblin, huge, massive, like, hoarder that lives in hell. All this stuff is coming in, and so I think maybe it would just be, these abilities are basically from the fight that you fight her in, so maybe it's too many abilities, but I wanted it to feel like this treasure goblin has been a pain, but not really difficult to deal with the entire battle. And then at level 10, bam, we get this boss that they can purchase after, maybe the treasure goblin player is hoarding all of their coins up until this point.
That's very, very true. And that's a decision you would have to make as the treasure goblin. And you'd probably have to communicate to your team as well that, here, this is what I'm going for, so let's make this happen. And I mean, speaking to the overpoweredness, it's a heroic after all. Yeah. And you're clearly making it a hard heroic to get. So I think we can give it the 3 abilities. Or maybe you get the 3 abilities if you pay more. Like, there's a pay scale she has.
Ooh, that'd be cool, right? Like, you could pay the Yeah, that's a great idea. You could pay more to get more abilities, but you can't get those, like, you can't carry enough coins until you get to a higher level to get those abilities, right?
Perfect. And what if, too, that's a talent you have to go into? So it may be some games you can't get the full Baroness because that's not what the game is requiring of you at the time.
Ooh, maybe the treasure goblin only has 1 heroic and it is the Baroness, right? Like, that's what you're going to do, and you build off of it with talents. This could go anywhere. I just love it. It's such a great idea.
That's fantastic. Well, I just love the fact that you summon Greed herself. That's so cool. She's such a great model. I mean, she would really sicken up the battlefield, because what I love so much about Diablo is that it has stuck true to its mature rating, which means the designers have been able to go full tilt when it comes to designing these horrific demons. Like, nothing is out of line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to, and I know they probably can't because of the, the whole idea of the Nexus. The Nexus still looks pretty clean to me, even in the Diablo sections. And I don't mean like I want it to be dirty and, all this, stuff that we see in Diablo with, people blowing up or tentacles coming out of their neck or whatever. But what I want to see is, I want it to get dirty more. I want it to feel like New Tristram,
It would be nice. It would be nice, but I think they are limited based on the ESRP rating that they have. So I don't think we'll see that unless they release some special map that you have to be 18 or older to access.
That would be crazy. Also, what would be crazy if they announced a new Diablo game at BlizzCon. That would be amazing.
One can dream. One can
dream. And then goodbye, even all the free time I don't have would go into that so that I could play the new Diablo game. Okay, that's basically my build there. So if I had to summon mine up into a short thought here, is that it's A treasure goblin that's an annoying hero that runs around the battlefield, can't attack, and uses those coins like we know in other MOBAs to purchase things that will push lanes for your team. And then, of course, with those heroic abilities at the end, maybe you can get the Demon Baroness Greed. All right, those are the two builds, everybody. Those are our two. So on Kristen's side, a specialist over there for Treasure Goblin, and on my side, a specialist as well. You can check out all of our builds on the website, which is HeroesForge.club, if you want to mill over and do all of your research before you vote for which one you think is best. But before we can call these heroes forged, we got to talk about the specialty skin. Kristen, what is the specialty skin on your side for your Treasure Goblin?
The specialty kit skin is sort of seasonal, because initially I was thinking, why not have a Santa? He's a little dude that's carrying a big old pack on his back. You could just color it red, give him an ill-fitting beard and a hat. You got yourself a Santa. But he's not good. He's a little goblin who steals loot off of rotting corpses on the battlefield. That's not inherently a Santa thing. So I went with Krampus. Treasure Krampus is what this would be called. And in Germanic legend, there exists an opposite of jolly old Saint Nick, Krampus. Boasting horns and fangs, he carries with him a sack of sticks he then uses to beat naughty children with before dragging them down into the underworld.
First of all, there's a new film out, I think it came out last year, called Krampus, and it is actually surprisingly A, funny, and B, there are some scary parts in it, and Krampus is just a really awesome legend that I didn't know anything about, and bringing the goblin into this is so cool, because there was, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in Heroes there was a Treasure Goblin Santa mount that you could get. I think it was last year. You could get this Santa Treasure Goblin mount and ride around in the Nexus with Santa Treasure Goblin.
I think you're right. And didn't he drop snowflakes or something? Because I didn't get that one. I have the regular treasure goblin mount, but I think you're right.
I think there's something related to that. Maybe it was just in the opening cinematic or something. Chat will keep us honest here, but I'm telling you, this is such a cool idea, and the Krampus thing is terrifying.
Oh, it's absolutely terrifying. It's basically a Christmas devil, and he takes you away to the underworld. Yeah, that'll probably keep kids in line more so than getting lumps of coal in their stocking.
Well, I went a completely different direction for my specialty skin over here, which is basically just two words: Scrooge McDuck. I think there needs to be a Scrooge McDuck skin for the Treasure Goblin.
Now, the question is, would we have to re-record his lines so he had kind of a Scottish draw to his yee-hees?
Absolutely. I think we're just going to throw away all of what we know about the Treasure Goblin at this point. When you buy the Scrooge McDuck skin, you are Scrooge McDuck. There's no Treasure Goblin aspect to it. You're just jumping in big piles of treasure, and instead of summoning a portal to get back to the shop, you're basically just getting a big pile of treasure that you're going to dive into that'll take you to the Scrooge McDuck vault. I mean, I love
it. Yeah, and then instead of summoning the monsters, you have your choice of Huey, Dewey, or Louie, and then the ultimate, the queen, is the little girl. What was her name? With the pink bow?
Gosh, that's quizzing me too hard there. I don't know.
I want to say Abigail, but I don't think it's Abigail.
Well, that's what we called her back in the day, whether it was Abigail or not. It's Abigail now. But Scrooge McDuck just taking a completely different turn on the Treasure Goblin in general. But still, I mean, the coins, that's what made me think of that.
I think it's a perfect fit. And I love that you're going full Scrooge McDuck, because when you first said it, I thought maybe it was a treasure goblin and he had tied a duckbill very poorly to his face, and he had very poorly tar and feathered his arms, and like feathers are flying off as he's running around.
That's the $5.99 version. To get the full Scrooge McDuck, you have to pay $9.99.
I would agree with that.
Absolutely. Let's say these heroes were forged. All right, everybody, that was our first showdown of hero forging here. So depending on which one you liked better, you can go ahead over to our Twitter channel or our Twitter page, which is @ForgeHeroes, and you can vote for which one you think took the cake this week. The winner of the two builds gets to pick the hero for next week, and then the second place person gets to go first next week. So there'll be lots of competition brewing here. Also, for this specific week, if you do take place in the voting, make sure that you leave a little comment on the tweet on our Twitter page, because what I'd like to do is raffle off a few Heroes of the Storm skins that I'd like to give out, and maybe a few Tracer heroes. So if you like to vote for these heroes and to kind of grow this voting process, head on over and vote. And you could win if you leave a little note in the voting section of the tweet. Kristen, that was an awesome show. I love this new format. I hope it really works out. Hope a lot of people vote. Where can people find you in the interwebs?
People can find me at Dream Destroyer. That is DRMDESTRYR over at Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as my health and fitness blog, battletobebetter.weebly.com, where this week I go over expectations and the reality of how long it will take to achieve things, kind of based on where you are now and what your goals are.
Oh, very cool. I think you could use that in a whole lot of life things, not just working out.
Amen. And I think the thesis statement of it all is it's going to take a lot longer than you think.
But it'll be worth it in the end, most likely.
Exactly.
Love it. You can find me right here on HeroesForge. We record the show live every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Amove TV, because we are a part of the Amove TV podcast and entertainment network. Head on over to Amove.tv for some killer, awesome esports and video game podcasts. Make sure you check out last week's episode of Into the Nexus, where they go in depth on all of the new hero reveal stuff. That show is your go-to Heroes of the Storm news show. Check it out on amove.tv. We do have a website. You can check out all of our builds. You can find the episode notes where you can look down each one of us, each one of our episode abilities for all of the heroes that we've done. This is 41, so we got 40 other ones over there that you can check out. And do your research before you vote on Twitter. Again, our Twitter handle is Forge Heroes, and the website is HeroesForge.club. You can also find us on YouTube for the VODs of all of the live recordings that we do. That's youtube.com/HeroesForge. And if you'd like to support the show, remember you can head on over to patreon.com/HeroesForge. And if you'd like to send us an email, you can do that too. You can send it to contactheroesforge@gmail.com. If you have an idea for a kit that you'd like to see on the show, or maybe you've built a kit for a character that you've seen since you started playing Legion, you thought this character would be really cool in Heroes of the Storm, send us your ideas. Contact HeroesForge@gmail.com or our contact tab at the top of our website, HeroesForge.club. We do a featured Forger episode every month where we take your ideas and implement them into the show. So check it out, and if you've got those ideas, send them over. You can download the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And Kristen, it'd be really fun to see the treasure goblin in the game.
I would have to agree, especially with these two wonderful builds we have presented to the audience. So let your voices cry out. Let Blizzard know which one you want to see. And maybe, just maybe one day, one little tip of the hat, it'll appear in there, and one of these abilities or heroics will show up with it.
Yeah, and then we would just quit the show and be like, we did it. Mission accomplished. And then we do the Chris Metzen hand gesture. We'd just be like, yes. And then we would move on. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the show. Don't forget to vote on our Twitter page @ForgeHeroes. And we'll announce the winner next Wednesday. So get your votes in before 10 a.m. Pacific on Wednesday so we can find out who, just who, we might be forging next week. And we will see you all in the real world.